My name is Richard Bellis, and I am a retired at the moment, they tell me, film and television and theme park music composer and conductor and producer. Um, Grew up in California, was lucky enough to have a father who was a band and orchestra, middle school band and orchestra teacher, and started a career very early in music.
That's
Now I do lots of master classes in Europe and in the States as well.
absolutely. Do you mind if we just jump right into some student questions? Because I've gotten some that have been emailed to me.
Not at all, although I do have a little bit I would like to say to the folks, but we can do it in
Let's
whatever
let's
order you like.
no, let's do that first. That would be great.
Okay. Well, um, I'm pretty sure most of the folks here are not necessarily interested in becoming a composer for film, games, and theme parks, but guessing that most of you might be interested in learning about a career in music. And I have a studio musician friend, a wonderful woodwind player, who pretty much says it best. He says, most people go to work, I go to play. And while some of the time it can be hard work, long hours, for the most part, while we're making music, it seems more like having fun, playing. Now, it's good to be thinking about a career, but you have time. And my experience is that a career pretty much chooses you. Um, and maybe a so-called life in music might be enough of a commitment for now. And let me explain that. Finding a career is a lot like whitewater rafting to me. I'm sorry, I love analogies, so this is one. You can choose the river, but you can't steer the boat. All you can do is fend off the rocks. My music career started as an arranger. I played trumpet and piano in school. And then in my 20s, after being drafted into the Army for 2 years, I arranged and conducted for various artists, and every year spent a lot of time doing 7 nights a week, 2 shows a night in the main rooms of Las Vegas casinos. Now, the husband of one of the groups that I conducted for it was a female singing group, and this husband got his chance at producing a network movie for television. We used to do in the late 70s, 80s, every network had a movie a movie of the week. And he had worked his way up from being a page at ABC, which is sort of like an usher for live audiences. And when he got this opportunity to produce a movie, he didn't know any film composers, so he asked me if I'd do it. And I, of course, said, yeah, I'll do it. And that started my career in film music. And that movie was one that I didn't score until I was 31 years old. So I had a career already as an arranger conductor. Now, at the time, TV music was not what one aspired to. We all wanted to score feature films. Well, it turned out that TV movies paid royalties that were far better than features, and basically those royalties funded the rest of my life. So if you want to, you could define the river that I talked about as music, and then it's up to the river to take you where it will while you fend off the rocks. There are so many career options in music. I'm most familiar with music recorded in the studio, so I'll give you another analogy of how a career path, a career trajectory can change. We all like doing something well, something we get compliments for, being in demand. And let's say, just for example, that you have your heart set on being a film and game composer. And in college, you meet a film student, a director who is working on a master's degree film project and doesn't need any original music, but needs someone with the ability to edit some existing music into the film. You have the software and some experience in editing audio files, so you say, okay, I'll try it. And you do a fabulous job. Now, this film student shows other film students and talks about how great you were to work with, and everyone is just blown away by how you handled this job. And that feels really good. Makes you think you may have a real gift for this. Now, one of those film students' last name happens to be Spielberg, maybe the granddaughter. And she asks if you would do some music editing on her project. And before you know it, you have a blossoming career as a music editor. This means that you're in the recording studio, which is a place you love to be, far more often than if you were a fledgling composer. And you're making good money. Now, many of my composing students have taken this alternate route. Some have become music editors, conductors, copyists, librarians, studio musicians, contractors who hire the players, and scoring mixers. I even had one student who became a composer's agent. So these are just a few of the career options associated with recording film and game and theme park music. The concert world is full of many of these same jobs, as you probably know. My dad's a good example. After a career as a dance band leader in the 40s, he wanted to start a family and settle down. So he went back to school, got a teaching degree, and became a middle school band and orchestra teacher. My middle school band and orchestra teacher. And that's a whole story in itself, but he found his calling. He was a magical music teacher. There is songwriting, music publishing, military bands and orchestras, jazz, pop, hip hop, opera, ethnomusicology, on and on. It's unlimited. A career is defined as what one does to support one's life expenses, both planned and unplanned. And if you can be something that you love doing, that's the best. You have so many people yet to enter your life, many of whom will bring opportunities for a career you might never imagine choosing for yourself. So choose the river, get in the boat, let it take you where it will, being careful to watch out for the rocks along the way. And then there's one more thing, and then I'll get to your questions. Remember, you can never have too much knowledge. Even if you think you will never have to read viola clef or not know how to voice say 4 French horns on a 3-note chord, learn the transpositions of the alto flute and the English horn, as well as knowing at least a little about all the digital audio workstations, DAWs, as we often refer to them, because it's impossible to know what you will need when that first opportunity presents itself. Okay, so that's an intro um, to this whole thing. I went to a career day when I was in middle school, which in the dark ages we used to call junior high school, and was lucky enough to meet with a composer, which turned out to be my chosen path. Um, but I want to know why you're here at 8 o'clock in the morning, probably in your pajama bottoms still. And what's on your mind? What are your questions? What are your thoughts about a career in music? And I'll try my best to answer some of them.
Well, thank you for that. Do you want us to call you Richard or Mr. Bellis or Maestro? I don't know.
Richard is
Richard,
the
okay.
best one, yes.
So I'll start with Miss Tusame's class. And guys, if you have any questions, go ahead and message them in the chat and we'll let you ask Richard. But Miss Tusame's class, if you guys want to ask the first question, you should be able to unmute yourself. I see a student coming up. Oh, they're
And
dressed.
you're not in your pajama bottoms because I see
No.
you're all together
Yeah,
as
I'll
opposed
ask.
to home on video.
So, Miss Tusame, you guys good to unmute? I might have to ask for. Oh, there you
Good
go.
morning. I haven't.
Good morning.
Let's change it. Oh my.
I got it. They're having some tech issues there. I can ask. They want to know what challenges did you face in your career, like in the beginning?
Well, let me think. That's a long time ago. Um, I think the biggest challenge is always the first important, or how you think of as important, job, because you're never really sure of yourself. And that makes you nervous. And when you're nervous, you portray that nervousness to whoever you're supposed to be working for. And that makes your job, whatever it is, more stressful. And also, you have to realize that with something like music and creating music, music is subjective, meaning that there's no right or wrong, there's no good or bad. Well, there may be bad, but it's subjective. The listener or the person who hires you is the one who you need to please. And with music being subjective, how you act and how confident you seem really affects how they listen to what you're creating. So when I talked about learning as much as you can't be over educated with music. That has to do with the confidence that you have when you go in for that first job, whether it's a player or a writer or a singer or whatever it is. They get the vibe from you that you are qualified, and that makes them want to hear your music as being terrific. So I think that was the hardest thing. Anytime you start something professionally, it's always fun when you're just doing it with friends and people you know, and then all of a sudden you're getting paid to do something, and that's nerve-wracking, or at least it was for me. And I made a lot of mistakes. I call imperfections one of my specialties. I may have a lot of flaws in my past.
That's
Does
wonderful.
does that answer your question, or is
I
there something specific?
I think that did. I think that did. And that's a really good quote there. We have a question from Miss Imbrogno's class. You should be able to ask.
Hello.
Hello.
My students would like to know what are some of your favorite shows that you composed for?
Great. Because I have a friend who's a wonderful composer named Bruce Broughton. And we often get together and talk about our favorite jobs. Our favorite jobs are writing for the Disney theme parks. Um, for many, many reasons, but they are creative people. They involve you early. Um, some of the work that I've done for the Disney parks over the years is the original Star Tours and the Tower of Terror and the Indiana Jones ride and the stunt show, the motorized stunt show. Um, Lots of really nice big attractions. And they will bring you in sometimes a year before the attraction is going to open. And you're a part of the creative team and you ride the rides well before they're ready to open. And in some cases, you have to time the music. The Indiana Jones ride, for example, um, I took a couple of associates of mine because we had to time the music while we were riding the ride. And the Indiana Jones ride, if you've been on it, is not a leisurely little smooth ride. It has a lot of jerks and bumps and stuff. And I've got two guys sitting with me on either side with stopwatches, trying to take notes and pencils are flying and clipboards are flying as we're jerking around this ride. And the ride can't go backwards. So you have to ride it 20 times in a row in order to get all of these various timings. Um, so it's always new technology. Star Wars, Star Tours, actually. There was a lot of music besides the John Williams actual ride music. And it caused me to produce the 5 most iconic notes I think I've ever produced. Um, Let me see if you can hear me play them. Which turns out to be the announce chime that is still used in the Star Tours attraction today. I wrote it over 30 years ago and just thought, what is this? And it still plays today. And usually when I play it, at least a few people recognize it from the early days of Star Tours. So it's those types of experiences that aren't normal, that aren't drudgery. And you can walk through the park and hear your music, which is always really fun. So that is the work for Disney, was some of the most fun I ever had. We mixed the Tower of Terror on the ride, with a mixing board strapped to the car. And we took the plunge, we took the fall, and tried to mix on the way down while going through that. So these things never happen in any other form of music. They are strictly things that go on at Disney. I think that's the most fun I've ever had.
That is Fantastic. I can't imagine you going to the grocery store or the mall where you hear something overhead and you think I could do it better than that. Any, anything happen like that? We have a question from Miss Kalahiki's class, and Miss Kalahiki, you guys should be able to unmute to ask. All right, she's got a loop there, so they have two speakers in the same room, so they're picking up the microphone. But if you guys want to just message it in the chat, I know that we had one of the other students here in Nevada. They wanted to know, with all the technology in the world of music, is there anything nowadays that you recommend more than any other as far as editing or anything like that?
Well, strangely enough, the thing that I would recommend most is looking into acoustic orchestration, because many of the sample libraries need a lot of finessing to get an orchestral sound, for instance. And if you know how to voice things, you cannot just, because it sounds like a string section, you cannot just play it in. It has to be what's called idiomatic. It has to be written or created like a string section, like a live string section would play. And that means that whole notes have a crescendo, decrescendo, for example. And if you can vary the vibrato, that's terrific. But more than anything else, even if you're dealing with electronic sounds and you're creating music, knowing how music is created, how three notes make a chord, and how those four French horns can play a three-note chord. Do you double the top note? Do you double the second note or the third note? You got to double something. Which do you do it? So even if you don't want to be an orchestrator, you don't want to be a composer, having a knowledge of how the orchestra is written is important. Musical knowledge as it exists is important to songwriters who may be writing everything on a guitar. If you know if you know something about all of the DAWs, the various formats, it qualifies you to maybe be an assistant to somebody that's working in the field. Every job we get comes through someone else. So working with other people, getting out and meeting other people and knowing about something that you can do for them, whether maybe it's a little notation or being able to take down a melody by ear. All of these skills will help you to find people and situations that you find pleasant to work in. Lots of knowledge. Learn it all. You don't have to use it all on every job, but know something about it.
That's great advice, wonderful advice. We'll go with one more student question, then we'll let you go. And this comes from Miss Kalahiki's class. And I was kind of wondering this myself because you did the It score for Stephen King, which
Yes.
evokes terrifying memories for me as a kid because I don't know how you did it, but with the creepy carnival music in that score, the kids want to know, and I kind of want to know this, how were you able to work with Stephen King and write such terrifying music just like that?
Well, first of all, I didn't work with Stephen King. I would have loved to, but post-production is a long way from writing and pre-production. Um, I think the music works because Tim Curry, who played Pennywise works, because the script written by Stephen King works. And that particular score um, happened. It just came. It was one of those things that was sort of given to me from the heavens and ended up in an Emmy Award, which didn't hurt my career at all. However, I only have one, and my friend Bruce Broughton I was talking about has 10 on his shelf. It always intimidates me as I go into his studio. But it's nice to have one. Um, so looking at Tim Curry as Pennywise, and I didn't have time to read the book actually, because the book is very long and the schedule for writing the music was not very long. I thought about Bernard Herrmann. Bernard Herrmann used what's called motivic writing. You take a little figure, a little motive, and do it over and over. And I found this. And then I was looking for, I knew I needed a melody to go on top of that. Can you hear that all right?
Oh yeah, yeah, we can
Okay.
hear it.
And I was looking for a melody, and I wanted an interval, a specific interval to start the melody. Tritones had been overused, and I didn't want to use a tritone. One day, and this is the creative process, one day I got out of the shower and I needed to dry my hair, and I picked up the hair dryer. I wish I have an audio file of it somewhere. And I ran the hair dryer, and then I turned up the speed on it, and it went, and this was a major seventh. So what all of a sudden became the theme. And creativity works that way. Creativity doesn't like work. It likes freedom to think, not distraction. And sometimes sleeping is the best creative process, but going to the vet, going to the store, going to get gas in the car is sometimes the best thing you can do to get creativity. You never know where it's going to come from. Mine came from a hairdryer. And then I used that major seventh, A to G sharp, for a lot of different things throughout that movie. That became my hook, and the little ostinato figure, thinking of Bernard Herrmann, became the accompaniment to that. So that's how it came about, but really inspired by Stephen King and Tim Curry as Pennywise.
That is, it was phenomenal work. It was absolutely terrifying. So you really hit the nail on the head. So
Well, with a lot of help.
I know that some of the kids have to get going, but before we go, is there any advice you can give to these kids real quick about as they go off into the world, whether they want to go into the world of music or something completely different? What kind of advice can you impart on them as they figure out who they want to be and what they want to do?
Well, besides the knowledge thing, study. If you feel passionate about music, study it. I grew up playing and singing, sight singing duets with friends. trumpet players playing bop duets and things like that. Um, you cannot get enough of that knowledge. And I sight singing is fabulous if you dare, if you're a singer at all. Um, but I think it's knowledge. I think it's following your passion, getting a lot of knowledge, and then choosing the river, being music, get in the boat. You're going to meet so many people between now and when you're 20, 22, and opportunities will happen, but they all happen through other people. Whether you get excited about starting a business with somebody that's a friend that you meet, or whether somebody asks you if you can play something or do something, all of your opportunities will come through that. So choose the river, get in the boat, fend off the rocks. You'll have a wonderful career.